One, we're having a look at theme 1, and in the last few classes we had a look at the timeline. We also saw how various species emerged: hominids, hominoids, Australopithecus, Homo. We then also went on to see the various theories on the origin of human, the modern human, and food. Now today we're going to have a look at early humans' shelter. Patterns of residence are reconstructed on seeing the distribution of artifacts. What are artifacts? Artifacts are basically things that are left behind. They could be tools, they could be items of pottery, etc. So basically we try and see the areas of residence on the basis of whatever things have been left behind, these artifacts. The artifacts here are flake tools and hand axes, as resources may have been abundant and the places visited. So we see that certain places were more popular. For example, areas near a river may have found more tools. So means people were actually frequenting that area more because food was available easily, water was available easily. Whereas compared to a desert, there you may probably I'm not saying you may not find any tool at all, but you may find very few. So probably while people were migrating, moving from one place to another, they may have just stopped there. Flake tools and hand axes have been found at Kilombe and Orgese in Kenya, which is in Africa. Between 400,000 to 125,000 years ago, cave and open air sites began to be used. We all know what a cave is. An open air site would be an area cleared out to rest. Where were people living before that? Well, remember how we saw that Australopithecus went extinct because it could not adapt to the changing climate, and this changing climate was a drier, colder climate where forests were not there anymore. So the Australopithecus used to live on trees. Evidence comes from sites in Europe like the Lazaret caves in southern France, which was a 12 into 4 meter shelter built against the cave wall. Inside it were 2 huts and evidence of different food sources: fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, bird eggs, and freshwater fish. So we have an evidence from southern France, the Lazaret caves. It's a 12 into 4 meter shelter which was built against the cave wall. We have found, now how do we know that it was used by people? No, you can't just randomly go and say, oh, probably this cave was lived in by people. No, you have to find evidence there. So the evidence here we find is 2 hearths. What are hearths? Hearth could be something like an open oven, but it may not, and it's made out of mud, right? So that mud may have not survived. So how do we know that there were hearths here? Because fire fire is burnt in a hearth. So when you keep burning fire in a certain area, that area becomes more dark compared to the surrounding area around it. That's how you know that a hearth must have been there. Then we have found evidences of leftover fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, bird eggs, and freshwater fish. Remember, the bones have survived. Some seeds have survived, burnt seeds have survived which had been carbonized. So we find all of these fossilized and preserved in time, and that's how we're unearthing them today and understanding what people ate and where they lived. Another site is the Terra Amata on the coast of southern France. This has a flimsy shelter with roofs of wood and grass built for short-term seasonal visit. So this is like an open air site, which means it's not really in a cave, but it's a little site made in an area but for short seasonal visits. We find evidence of baked clay and burnt bone. So we know that they are using fire and they're using it to strengthen things and cook things and make things. Hearths indicate controlled use of fire. This is very important. Controlled use of fire is important because if you start a fire and you don't know how to control it, it is going to burn everything in its way. It's going to keep spreading. It's not going to stop. Remember how forest fires, once they start, they spread and they cause massive destruction? Same thing here. But the fact that you and I, we use stoves in our houses, there's fire in it, we cook food, but it's controlled, right? The same way, if you use a hearth, and especially if you go to rural areas, you will see how in little areas made out of clay or baked mud, fire is burning and things are put. In Hindi you could call it a chulha, a chulha. So that also has fire, but it has controlled fire, right? Because if you don't know how to control the fire, it's going to destroy everything around it and destroy you as well. So in controlled use of fire indicates the fact that they have a developed mental ability to understand what this force of nature is and how to use it for their convenience. Now, early humans' tools. The fact that the early man could make tools is what will differentiate between them and the regular apes. Because tool making requires greater memory and complex organizational skills. Remember, our brain size increased, which helped in better memory and better intelligence. And apart from that, organizational skills, and also over time, for primates, the thumb, the opposable thumb, that is the one which will enable them to actually use their hands properly and make tools. Earliest evidence seen in Ethiopia and Kenya. We find the earliest evidence by Australopithecus actually, where these tools were not very sophisticated, but they did the job. Tool makers were both men and women. There is no gender differentiation in who's making tools. Women in particular may have made and used tools to obtain food for themselves as well as to sustain their children after weaning. So, but tools were being made by both men and women because they both had to survive. But it's also believed that mostly women were making these tools because they not just had to feed themselves but also their babies, their children. For hunting, we see usage of spears and bows and arrows. For sewing, we see sewing needles made from very thin, fine bones. How were tools made? They were made by a technique called the punch blade technique. Please remember this. This is a favorite for 1 mark question. So what technique were the early humans using for making tools? The punch blade technique. This is used for making chisel-like tools. We'll have a look at the pictorial representation also, but let's just look at it in detail theoretically, how these tools were made. The top of a large pebble is removed. So imagine that the large pebble kept there and the top of it is removed, the upper portion is removed using a hammer stone. Now that top is removed, so there's a flat surface left of that big pebble, of that large pebble. Now that flat surface will become the striking platform. Now that striking platform is struck using a hammer and a punch made of bone or antler. This leads to the production of blades that can be used that can be used as knives or modified to serve as chisels or burins, which could be used to engrave bone, antler, ivory or wood. Bone, you know what bone is? Antler are the horns of deer. Ivory are the tusks of elephants, that's ivory, and wood is from trees, wood. Let's have a look at how this was happening. Here, this is the punch blade technique. Now in the first, I'm going from the left to right. So when you have a look at the first picture on the left, see the large pebble, right? So see one hand is holding the pebble to keep it in place and the other hand has another stone or something to strike at the large pebble. Now you're going to strike at the large pebble and you're going to try to break off one upper part of it. So you see the next picture, see that upper part has been broken off, right? Now when that upper part has been broken off, have a look at the last picture. The last picture is basically the pebble only, but the upper portion has been removed, so it becomes flat. Now when it becomes flat, you start chipping at its sides. When you start chipping at its sides, long portions of the pebble will come out. And have a look at the last picture on the right, that when that long portion of a pebble comes out, it's going to be shaped the way the last sketch is shaped, and that can later be used as a chisel or as a knife. So this is the punch blade technique. You can have a look at a few other tools. Neolithic implements. These tools can or will resemble some of our modern tools also. See, this big thing in the middle resembles a hammer. In fact, most of them are going to resemble hammers and axes, hand axes. Also remember, when we look at a lot of these things, like today, probably if you look at something, you may not see it as a tool, right? But archaeologists, historians, when they unearth all these things, when they discover these things, they try and study them, their shapes, and apart from that, they try to relate it to how we are using modern techniques. And that is how we're using modern tools. And that is how they try and draw parallels. For example, a hearth. A hearth was used then, a hearth is used even today. Much later, when we see other civilizations like Mesopotamia and Indus, we will find tools there which are even used till today, like similar looking sort of tools for a similar purpose. So we feel they were being used for the same thing. Thank you.